All right, Happy Engineer, welcome back, and super excited to have Gina Riley in the house. Gina, welcome to the Happy Engineer podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for this conversation.
You're a career transition coach now. You've spent your entire life in the talent space, in HR, talent acquisition, recruiting, everything around this. And we're in the middle of another wave of time where lots of people are asking new questions and hard questions around, yikes, what do I do with my career because they've been let go, laid off, or they want to transition and feel like, yikes, the economy's not good. I don't know what to do. Maybe now's the time to just hunker down and stay safe, and they're not taking action. And so it's a perfect time to talk about what you call career velocity, this career velocity system, and people who either need a job because they're unemployed or they still want to advance and grow and develop their career, but they feel kind of stuck on how to do it when the opportunities are not knocking on their door. So maybe the first thing I wanted to get curious about for your perspective is this old question that keeps coming back around that I want to set the stage with, and engineers really want to know the truth. Do you need to change companies again and again in your career in order to maximize success? So before we talk about the strategies to find new jobs and transition, I just wanted to start with that idea. My clients generally believe the old days of one company career building are gone. Every couple of years, I need to be changing companies if I want to build my career. You've been in the space. This is your zone of genius. What's the truth, Gina? Is that the way it is? Or can you be successful by building a career within an organization? What do you think?
I think the first question you ask yourself is, what does success look like for me? That's the first question. So if success means I want to maximize my earning potential and I'm only going to see certain incremental increases depending on if I get promotions, et cetera, and doing your homework internally and finding out what that trajectory is, and are you on the path and have you defined it? And do you have a performance plan for yourself, a professional development plan to get there? You can absolutely do it internally. There's upward opportunities, there's cross-functional opportunities. You can do it internally. You don't have to leave. But what if it's not salary? What if it's not getting visibility and opportunities internally and you're hungry to learn more and do more and be more? What is that definition for you? And then on the landscape, what kind of homework can you do to start informing your plan?
Is it a true statement then, if someone wants to optimize around income, salary, total comp, the data suggests rotating companies is the fastest way to make that happen?
It is possible that that's the route that one needs to go. And think of it this way. I read a terrific book, two books. One is called Millennials and Management, and the other is called The Boomerang Principle, written by Lee Caraher. What she talks about with the boomerang principle as a leader is treat your employees well. And she's talking about that millennial generation because she's the next generation up. Treat them well, so well that when they do go seek an opportunity elsewhere, that they want to boomerang back. And yes, you will be paying them more. Their skill level went up and all of that. But if we're treating each other well in these companies and we have those opportunities to come back and welcome people back, then we're going to enhance our culture. We're going to enhance our knowledge base because people have been out there doing other things. So I would say to that mid-level career professional, don't be scared to intentionally take another opportunity if it adds to your toolkit.
I've not read that book yet. I'm going to put it on my list. The Boomerang Principle. Okay.
The Boomerang Principle. Got a 3 on my bookshelf because I give it away.
I love that. What's so interesting is that I think I mentioned to you before we hit record, I've had several conversations this week with engineering leaders who have been laid off for various reasons. There's a lot of challenges in tech right now. Mm-hmm. And 2 of them specifically told me in our conversation that they had already gone back to their previous employer, their previous manager, and specifically asked, is there any chance my old job is still available or that you have anything open for me? Because they wanted to go and see, because they already knew the culture, they knew the person, knew the leader. And unfortunately for these 2 individuals, there was no open opportunity. But that's really a good point. Treat everyone on your team as if there's going to be a day that they will come back and work for you again. I love that.
Absolutely. Have goodwill out there. And it's not abnormal to go see if the grass is greener on the other side as well. Or maybe you do have a great experience, but you kind of miss whatever it was at your previous company. I was talking to my husband, who's an engineer by education and in his early career. And we were just talking a week ago or so, and he said, some of the smartest people where I felt like I was the most challenged by the people around me. And we both started at Intel. It's not where we met, but he said some of the smartest people I've ever worked with were at some of these big companies where we were all culturally rowing in the same boat. We were behaving in similar ways. That's part of the culture. We live out our values, and that's what our culture is. So whether or not we say what our values are, it's how we live them out. And at Intel, they, at least when I was there, did a great job of indoctrinating one into the culture and saying, here's how we operate together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was with smart people, and it was energizing. And so now he reflects on his whole career with, doing the startups and having all these other opportunities. It's like, I felt like I was in my genius zone when I was in that environment versus, let's say, a startup environment.
Yeah, that's great.
But he learned, now he's got a toolkit that's way bigger than the people that stayed 28 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Gina, let's set the stage around career transition. And I know the happy engineer wants to get all the tips, all the advice, and we don't have time to cover the entire 9 principles of career velocity. But first thing I'm curious about is, would you say there's a difference in how we approach this if you're currently laid off, unemployed because of a challenging situation, economic or otherwise, versus you're employed and just want a new opportunity? Or are the principles and the fundamentals the same? It's just one person might have a little more urgency to work through it faster. What's your thought about that?
My fundamental belief is you first start with you. You've got to know what you stand for, what your strengths and talents are, what your values are, and what motivates you. And building up that storytelling so that as you lay out that transition plan, or maybe it's a professional development plan internally, you already know what you stand for and where you're heading.
Yeah.
You've got to start with you. I don't care if you've been laid off, because if you've been laid off, there's an extra piece that you have to consider. And that is, you've got to deal with the transition management piece. You've got to deal with the hurt, the anger, the trough of despair, and then make that plan for the new beginning. It's a psychological curve. I recommend people buy William Bridges' Transition Management book. It's only this big and has the psychological underpinnings of what happens to us. It's similar if we lost a loved one, somebody passes away, we first have that shock, disbelief, and then there's the trough of sadness. And then we need to make plans for the new beginning.
Absolutely.
So if you've been laid off, you've got that piece. But if you're comfortable sitting in a company and you're like, I've got time, well, make a plan to do this over months. Half of the people I work with are doing that. They have a job, and sometimes there's not a lot of urgency. The people who have been laid off, unless they have a cushion, there is urgency.
So there's 2 things I want to highlight because I think it's so important, and I see it all the time with the engineering leaders I've coached, Gina. One is we want to ignore that transition dip. It really manifests in many ways psychologically like a grief cycle. I always show people the old sort of Kubler-Ross grief cycle model in these stages where we dip down and then coming back out of that. It is a loss, right?
Yes.
You just lost your job. And psychologically, it processes as a loss. You will go through grief. It may not be as severe as losing a loved one, but at the same time, if you've spent 10 years of your life working for this company, pouring your life energy into that organization and those relationships, it is a big loss psychologically. And people don't want to sit with that discomfort of grief and anxiety and stress and sadness and the whole experience of that. Engineers especially, we lack some emotional intelligence. We don't know how to be present with that.
Yeah.
And that's not really part of the career coaching most people get. And so I just love that you said, don't skip that part. Like, you need to have a plan and the support. And frankly, a spouse or a partner is not always the right person. Having a professional there with you to support you through the grief
Right.
can be really instrumental in accelerating your next steps, because otherwise it just derails you subconsciously all day long.
It does. And I'm going to tell your audience why. Here's why. You can't carry that backpack full of rocks into your interview situation
Yes.
or into the informational conversations that you have with people or as you tap into your network. It is the worst, because what you're doing is you're bringing other people down with you, and they don't know how to help, and they're not equipped to deal with the emotional piece. So you've got to deal with that so that you can put your best positive forward motion, in front of you.
Really good. I think people who are currently employed, making a transition to a new company, or maybe it's even just a cross-functional one to a new department, but it's going to be very big in terms of the amount of change. They assume that this won't happen to them because, well, I'm going from one job to a better job. So this is an upgrade in my career. But I remind people it's so common, 1 week, 2 weeks, 90 days into your new job, you start to feel these negative emotions, this sadness, or this, some of the motivation's not there. You have this off day and you're not sure what's going on. You're like, wait, I'm in this better situation. Why do I feel sad today? Don't forget that just because you've upgraded your career, you still have a loss in your subconscious of the career you just walked away from. So 100%. It's not uncommon to experience a grief cycle in the first 30, 60, 90 days on your new role in this new company, even though it's supposed to be this happy, exciting experience.
Oh, yeah. I agree with you.
I think what you said is so important, that we need to begin with ourselves. And what I see is the unemployed person, because of that fear and urgency to go get a job, is they skip all these steps.
Yep, they go straight to the resume.
I just hope people hear you saying this. You've helped, how many hundreds or thousands of people now? And it's like, you got to still get that part right, regardless of where you're starting from. And I think the biggest failure mode I see with people laid off is they just get kind of frantic and they don't go do that core foundational work. They just start applying for jobs, jumping into interviews, stumbling over themselves, and it kicks off that downward spiral where they lose confidence because the interview doesn't go well because they didn't do this piece. So,
I have a story that kind of amplifies what you're saying, if I may, with a senior engineering leader who, through no fault of their own, had been through a couple of layoffs. And we're talking, entered an ecosystem, was knocking it out of the park, but then the company decided we're going to let 125 people go. And a certain percentage are those engineering leaders, the VP, a couple of VPs, GMs, what have you, right? If a whole business is being carved off, that isn't your fault. If you're in technology, it's not unusual to have those decisions being made. So I was working with someone who had been through a couple of things like that with a few gaps because the partner was moving to another location, then it was hard to get a job there, whatever the situation was. So the person I'm working with at the time now is feeling dogged down. The emotions are very deep. The hurt is deep. The networking connections it's not happening. And so when we started with, my process, we're doing that, tapping into what is your awesome sauce? Like what can you deliver on? What is your unique value proposition? And we got very, very clear. Literally in a few weeks' time, she started like every conversation, she was way down in the frame of Zoom. And by the time we worked a couple weeks together and she started to embrace what she could do and deliver on, she was very forward in the frame, makeup on.
Yeah.
Bright colors. I mean, the transformation was amazing because she's like, oh, I can do this.
Yes.
This is possible.
Yes,
but
I love
we got to go through that. We got to tap into like what that is, because at first it was, I don't think I am special and unique. Other people can do this too. I'm like, well, let's see. Let's see about that.
And for those just listening to the audio podcast, not seeing you, it's like a visible posture change that is a subconscious indication of a new level of confidence and power and readiness to step into your transition, which frankly is one of the most influential things in that interview, more than the words you're going to say. So
it's so incredibly important. And what I would have people look into is executive presence. There's 3 dimensions of executive presence. It's appearance, communication, and gravitas. The first hurdle that we have to overcome when we meet people is 250 milliseconds. People are making a snap judgment about us when we are seen. Once we get past that first hurdle, now we're in communication and gravitas. But that's really important. So if you show up halfway down the frame, dark lighting, dark colors, and you're sad, what are you telling people?
Okay, we have to jump around here because we can't skip this point. 3 core pieces to executive presence. And executive presence doesn't mean you have to be a C-suite leader for this to matter. This is all of you listening. All right, so this is for everybody. And appearance, communication, gravitas. Tell me how you define that third one. I have a sense of what I think it is, but what is gravitas? How does that show up? How would you describe that for the engineering leader who's like, okay, that's not really sure how to do that. What does that mean?
What is that? Okay. So appearance is obvious. And by, the social science, that's the least important, but the first hurdle. There's like about 17 micro pieces. So, and communication is a little more obvious. It's like how we're showing up confidently and how we articulate ourselves. But gravitas is how we behave. Are we showing up with confidence? When we make a decision, I lean on the work by Sylvia Ann Hewlett, and she wrote a book called Executive Presence, The Difference Between Merit and Success. Because we all put work into our career and we think it's obvious how great we are, but we don't always know how we're being perceived. So executive presence isn't what we think of ourselves, it's other people's perceptions of us. So it's how we appear, it's how we speak, and how we act. And so you know it. You walk into a room and someone is there with confidence, who draws people in, who listens, not afraid to make the hard decisions. It's the leader and the person that people want to listen to and follow because they show up with that aura about them. Maybe it's charisma, right? It's that secret sauce, right? And so how do we tap into that? Well, first, again, you start with you. Do you feel confident in your own skin? Do you know why you're special and unique? Do you know what your unique value proposition is? Can you speak to it? And do you feel good about it?
Yes.
Did I answer that? So
good. No, this is really important. And it's funny, we just did a great podcast episode with Brendan Karumasamy, but it's a fun, challenging last name for me as a Midwestern guy. But it's how to become a top 1% communicator in your industry. And I just so for the happy engineer, go listen to that episode and work on this piece, the appearance piece. Maybe we need to get a personal brand designer in here and talk about appearance. But this gravitas, I'm so glad you articulated that, because so often as a technical leader, what engineers, and myself, I'm guilty of this for so long in my own career. I wanted my work to speak for itself. We all have this sense of merit needs to be defined by the results that I create and the value of my work alone. But that's not the culture of companies, and it's not the culture around career transition. If you want to land a new job, you can have 2 identical resumes, identical results, and the person who brings this edge of executive presence is the one who's going to get the role every single
100%.
time.
Yeah. 100%. And let me amplify that even further. One is, as individuals, we've heard you need to own your own career. We said that inside of Intel all the time. You own your own career. But what I say is you cannot be the world's best kept secret. You cannot expect people to come and tap you on the shoulder and go, "You're amazing. We want you to take the next best job." You can't expect it. It happens to some people, but it doesn't happen to most people.
Right.
So you've got to own it. If you wander through your career and things just happen to you, eventually there will be a tap out point. It's just life.
Yeah. And Gina, I'd even say for the people who it just sort of happens to, we all want to look at them and say they're so lucky, they just got picked or whatever. But when you really dig in and figure out what happened there, the truth is they weren't a best kept secret. The truth is somehow their work did get out. They did build that personal brand. Someone did get that reputation of who they are and the power and what they can bring to the table. They may not have had to be as proactive to make it happen, but the indicators of them not just being in the wings as a best kept secret, are there every time you dig deeper.
Absolutely. I
And
did it. I just did a quick search, and just to answer your question more precisely, gravitas is grace under fire, confidence and grace under fire, decisiveness or showing teeth, taking that hard stand, integrity or speaking truth to power, emotional intelligence, reputation and standing, and vision and charisma.
Oh,
So those
man,
are
well, we could do a whole nother episode on gravitas.
Oh yeah. I wrote a 3-part series on this, so I love this topic. So have me back on, we'll go there.
All right. So for the moment, we kind of jumped off of the normal path here. We talked about you got to do the work on yourself first.
Yeah.
Get clear on your strengths, your story, etc. And I'll just say it bluntly, go get help on that, because it's very hard to do for yourself by yourself. To go through a guided process with a pro who can help you put the language around it and really extract your best, especially for engineering leaders, because we tend to be, I'll call it humble. I'm using air quotes for those who can't see, but in other words, you just don't want to talk about yourself. You have a self-esteem block to putting your best in front of other people. And that coach can help you say, no, you need to say how good you are. And here's how to say it without coming across like an arrogant prick. That is so powerful. So hire Gina, get help on that. Now, let's shift, because I want to cover a few other things before we run out of time. We talked before we hit record today about resumes and LinkedIn a little bit. And I get asked about this all the time. So what's the 101 on resumes and our digital resume and LinkedIn? Where do we need to be focused there, or where are the failure modes? What's the most important kind of things we need to know, Gina?
The most important thing that anybody needs to know, in my opinion, is to not start with the resume. It is a marketing document, whether it's in paper or it's digital. It helps you market yourself. Same with LinkedIn. I call it your marketing storefront window. People breeze by. They're either attracted by the shiny object to keep reading more, or they pass you by. And it's all the things you said back in your December podcast of like, is your photo, headline, and banner attractive? Does it speak to the audience you're trying to attract? We could talk about LinkedIn, you and I, probably all day long, so I won't do that right now. But again, it kind of goes back to, if you understand who you are and your unique value proposition, and you take a really good, sharp look at your whole career history, chronicle it out, and then tease out those big wins where you had an impact on your company. That's the fuel for your resume in the first place. And that's the fuel for your stories for interviews. So you got to start again with you. Who are you? How do you show up? And then what are the big career wins, and how do you add value?
Yeah. So Gina's referencing episode 89 for anybody who wants to go get those simple tactical tips about LinkedIn. I really appreciate what you're saying. And I think it's important for us to be clear that you don't win with the resume, this marketing storefront of your career, by simply focusing on tactics, keywords, this sort of thing. It's, do you have the right core content, the principles? You know, we have this piece, right? Which for me, I'm passionate about. It's almost, I think it's an engineering thing. Like, life is built on first principles, the fundamentals of physics and all these things. And it's funny how we then get into these high pressure situations. I need a job, and we kind of throw all that out the window. And it's like, just tell me what to do. Should I say this or that? Should I say this? And so go back to the core message, the marketing message, the benefits of someone hiring you.
Yes. What's your value? What will you bring to the person willing to pay you? Because your target audience needs to understand that. Now, is the resume important? Sure. It can be a door opener, a conversation opener. When you're in an interview, people are referring to it. You've got to know what's on that document. Like, that's the hard work, is what goes into the document for the stories, not the beautiful formatting and all of that. And truth be told, what we should be doing as job seekers is we're opening up conversations through our network, getting introductions. We spend most of our time doing that versus just apply, which we call spray and pray, because most of us, especially I would say, technology experts, if I apply, someone will eventually call me. But we know the odds are very low because there's hundreds and thousands of people that can apply to any given job.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, I want to come back to networking because I know everybody is like, well, Gina, how do I do that? How do I do that? But really quick, I'll just double down on something you said because it's so important. Anytime I have an engineering leader who I coach tell me they got stumped in an interview because somebody asked a question about something on their resume that they didn't have a story or a good answer for, it just like kills me. It's like, wait, what? You have
Ouch.
you have something on your resume that you don't know how to talk about? Like,
That's
so
no good.
I'm just kind of putting that out there. What you said is so important. Like, you're the one deciding what goes on the resume. So
Yeah.
make sure that you know the aligned brand centric value proposition storytelling response to any question about anything on your own resume. Just gotta,
I that's a mic drop.
I feel like it seems obvious, but it's not always obvious. So don't do that. Don't just fill your resume with a bunch of random stuff that you don't want people to ask you about. Networking. We're just going to take it as truth that sitting in your fluorescent lit basement applying for jobs all day on monster.com is not the way to upgrade your career as far as the best path forward. So,
It is not.
introductions, conversations, tell us about where is the leverage? How do we do that effectively? Who should we be reaching out to? A couple of the key things, if you were just going to say, Zach, like, all right, Gina, I need a job. I just got let go from a Waco. It's not looking good for me. I need a job. What should I do on this whole networking thing?
Yeah.
What would you
The,
say?
the first thing that I would have people do is, well, there's many things. One is you need to create a target list of the companies and organizations and the roles that you eventually, where are you heading? If you don't have a clear objective, people cannot help you. You should not be entering an ecosystem of conversations where you expect the person that you're getting their time to magically inform you of your process. You need to have some idea. So you got to start there. Okay.
Wait. Gina, you mean I can't just call all these people and say, I need a job. Do you have any openings?
No, you're absolutely not doing that. What you're doing is you're cracking open conversations through informational conversations, not do you have a job? It's like, I am prepared with questions to ask you to inform my process. Help me get smarter about what I'm doing. I just interviewed 2 months ago this incredible man. His name's Rich Lehman, and I published an article in Industry Expert magazine. Rich, not an engineer, he's a supply chain leader. He went through 3 layoffs, and the third one was in '08. He is at this point in his 60s, and he wants to work at Nike. So he spends 18 months. He gets 99 in-person conversations, 99, 20 with one person that became a mentor, all the rest individual, all on the Nike campus in the coffee shop. And the entire approach, she's got 8 steps, was don't pull out your resume when you get there. You have your questions laid out. You learn, you listen, you take notes, you find out about the people personally, you send the thank you note. It's like human behavior 101. And he
Yeah.
landed. After he landed, he was there a decade and got laid off at, I think it was 69. It was some, I mean,
Still,
it's an incredible story. And now he's a career transition mentor for a local
yeah.
organization. It's so beautiful. But these fundamentals are so important for all of us to like listen and embrace. So know your target and then gain access to people by saying, can you help me get smarter about my process? Here's where I think I'm heading. What are my roadblocks? What are the perceived roadblocks? We may think we're awesome, but you may have something running against you that you don't even know. That's a blind spot.
Hmm. Yeah. I just feel the energy of this whole conversation about how important it is to build in the right sequence your strategy for how you're going to go out there in career transition, whether you're unemployed today or you're happily employed, but you want to grow. It's like doing these things in the right order with the right strategy so that when you are having a networking conversation, you're asking the right questions and leaning on the right stories and all these things. It's all connected. And so I love that. Gina, if there was one thing that people just absolutely screw up when it comes to networking, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. I'm going to go back to they show up ill prepared, to have the conversation. And that's not knowing your target. I'm kind of going off of the people close to me in my life. I have an executive for a husband, and I know a lot of executives. It's when you ask for people's valuable time and you waste it and you squander it. That is the worst thing that you can possibly do. And typically when people do that, they're still in the trough of despair. They haven't just defined their target and their unique value proposition. They feel dogged down. You've got to get in that place of like, I'm excited because I'm heading in this direction. Can you help? So don't go in ill prepared. That's the worst thing you can do.
I really appreciate that. And being on the receiving end of requests for my time every single week, constantly on LinkedIn. And I have to say no to most of them because I just don't have the capacity. But when you do say yes to someone to have a conversation and then they just show up and want to talk, it's like, oh, please.
Shoot the breeze. Oh, let me tell you about my whole career story. And you're like, I don't need your career story. I need to know your pain points.
Yeah. I want to help you. What's that movie? Help me, help you.
Help you. I know. Like for those of us, right, Zach, we want to help people. We're helpers. That's why we're doing what we're doing. But we can only help those that are ready to embrace what we have to share with them.
Yeah, it's really good. Really, really good. And I'll just put one more piece on networking and see if this resonates for you or if you would take anything and add or subtract from this, Gina. But a lot of engineers, because of our personality, I'm painting with broad brush stereotypes here, but introverted, maybe shy, communication skills are underdeveloped in cases. We get stuck on the call reluctance, some of the courage that it takes to pick up the phone and make those calls or do those outreaches, or we get caught on needing to know exactly what to say. What's the exact right question? What's the exact right way to have this networking chat? And because we don't feel confident in the script, we don't want to make the call. And I've just found over and over again, it's not about the script. It's about the energy, not so much what you say, but how you say it and your heart. And did you do your work and prepare? Do you know the target, et cetera? And if you come in with that right energy, it's going to go fine, and just relax, make the call. But what would you say? Is there any level of detail or scripting or thing like really is important, or you would agree, like, honestly, if you've done your homework, if you're ready, just go make the call?
If you do your homework, like you've done some cursory company information and it's not just on the website, you're looking at like what's in the media, what are the high points for a given company, what's happening in your industry. That's all informative, because then you can start to create a more rich picture, which will lead to better questions, because the questions lead you to your answers, right? But one thing that I recommend to your listeners is a book by Steve Dalton. It's called The 2-Hour Job Search. And in the 2-Hour Job Search, it's all recipes for success. So it's very much explaining the psychological underpinnings of why we go down the wrong rabbit hole, like spray and pray. He gives you reasons, percentages of success if you use formulas. And he's got formulas in there. And I have all my coaching clients buy that book. He's got a formula or recipe called Tiara. And I'm not going to get it all right now, but Tiara stands for, what are the trends happening here in my industry? What insights do you have for me, regarding XYZ? I forget what the A is right now. What resources do you have to offer? And then for those who are younger professionals, the last A is about assignments. Like, is there some assignment I can give myself to go and learn more? So there are formulas, and engineers love formulas, right? We like recipes. So there are formulas that you can follow that will lead to better success. And the Tiara method is one way for you to have a construct.
Love it.
To have a conversation.
Love it. We do well with a simple framework as an engineer that I can then build into. So
exactly. I believe in frameworks because that's what mentally helps us move from point A to point B.
Yeah. So speaking of frameworks, Gina, I know people are going to want to get support from you, and the Career Velocity system is exactly that. You have this structured framework and approach to help somebody with all the things we talked about today and a lot more to succeed in your career transition. So where can people find out more about you, get plugged in with your work if they need help on this journey?
Well, there's lots of moving parts to career transition success, and it's not all about one piece. It's about all of them, and it doesn't have to happen all in an exact order. But I've defined a framework that I think works. I know it works, called Career Velocity. I have on my website, GinaRileyConsulting.com. If you go to the top, there's a green button. Click on the green button. You get a webinar, a 30-minute webinar, and a downloadable workbook that may go to your spam folder. You can print the workbook, listen to me as an earworm, walking you through some of the things we talked about today. Do you understand your strengths? What are your core values? How does that relate to the job that you want, etc.? That is the start to your plan. It is totally free. You don't even have to call me. You can find me on Industry Expert Magazine. I've written almost 40 articles for that publication. And then LinkedIn, if you want to reach out on LinkedIn, send a personalized connection request. Tell me that you heard me here talking with Zach, because we all get a lot of spam and a lot of sales pitches. And I look at every single inbound request. I look at the whole profile. I look to see if you're legit. I look at recommendations, about summary. I look at the whole thing.
Cool. So mention the Happy Engineer in your LinkedIn connection request to Gina, so she'll accept and give you the support you need. We'll put all those links in the show notes. So click in whatever you're tuned in, if it's phone or if you're on your computer, then it'll be on our website. So definitely want to encourage you, if you're interested in support, if you want to understand career velocity, go connect with Gina. Oh, we could go for hours. There's so many things, Gina, we could explore, but I'm excited to wrap things up here. And you know this as a coach yourself, great coaching, great engineering. It all has in common that the questions lead, the answers follow. And if we want better answers in our career transition, we need to ask better questions. So what would be the question you would lead the Happy Engineer with today?
What would I leave people with today? What are my core strengths? And when I mean strengths, I mean your natural talents that you came to the planet with. And the first clue to go and start to figure that out and answer that question is doing the Strengths Finder or using the UMAP career profile assessment, which gives you actually 4 ways to start answering that question.
Love it. Love it. And shameless plug, episode with Daria Williamson, we talked all about strengths for a whole episode, so you can go there too. Gina, I love that. What are your strengths? Let's get that right. The foundation of your career velocity going forward. Gina, thank you so much for your time today. This has been incredibly fun. I just want to acknowledge you, the great work you're doing. Keep supporting all these amazing leaders in their transitions, and we'll have to do it again sometime. Thanks again.
Thank you.